So in today's lesson we're going to look at the Vanishing Point tool more closely, and we have this example here of this building that we want to clean up a little bit. What we're going to do here is change some of the surface features of the building, such as show what this building might look with a brick facade and maybe a siding facade. So we're going to first off clean up the trees that you see on this image. Take these trees out here and the sign and repair all of these features using the Vanishing Point tool. So to begin with, first going to make a copy of my background image. So we're going to duplicate this layer, and this is the one we'll work on here. And from here I'm going to throw a couple of adjustments on. First adjustment that I'm going to put on here is brightness and contrast, because we want to brighten this image up a little bit. It's a little bit dark right now. It's a cloudy, kind of hazy day, so we're going to brighten this up just a little bit. It's going to blow the clouds out and the sky out, but that's okay. We can come back to this later and add a new sky in there, which is fine. When we brighten it up, it actually reduces the vibrance and the hues a little bit, so I'm going to also throw on a vibrance adjustment on this and crank the vibrance up a little bit, and that'll bring back some of the color as well as the saturation. We can boost that up a little bit. So once I've done that, what I'd like to do from this point forward is work on a composite of this image, basically showing the vibrance and the brightness and contrast, putting all these together. So again, we're going to hold down the Shift, Alt, and Command keys on a Mac, or Control, Alt on a PC, and basically come in here and create your merged visible layer, so that we put this new layer on top here. You guys have all done this before, so basically, putting all this together. At this point here, we could have actually, let's look at this a different way. If we don't want to do that, we'll just trash this for a second and basically bring these adjustments down to the background copy. So we could click on, for instance, brightness and contrast, and right click and say merge down. That'll bring that down to that layer, and then vibrance, we can merge that down. If you're happy with your results, then you can do this merge down method. You lose those adjustments, but if you don't have to go back to those adjustments, there's no need to really keep them. So this would be our initial layer that we would start working on. The first thing I'm going to do is establish my grids in the Vanishing Point. So we're going to come up here to Filter and down to Vanishing Point. And this will open up a new window for us. And in here, the first thing that Vanishing Point wants us to do is establish a perspective grid. This Create Plane tool is on by default, and you notice everything else is grayed out. You can't do much until you put these on. So I'm going to go ahead and basically follow the perspective of one of these sides of the building. I'll start with the right hand side. So I'm going to pick up here underneath the eave and pick up here underneath the eave on the corresponding end here, and then come straight down and drag down to the foundation here. And you can see this is putting on this blue grid outline. As soon as I click here, we'll establish this blue grid that you see on here. If any of the time that you see a red, yellow, or green grid, that means that your grid is out of adjustment and it's not correct. So for instance, let me just kind of adjust this here and see if we can't. There we go. So here's one where you can see obviously it's red, it doesn't put the grid on there, and basically you want to have that blue grid on there, and you want to be following the perspective of the building like this. So once you've established one grid, it's easy to put on your next grid. Basically what you want to do is hold down the control key and basically click the middle grid, and while you're holding that down you can drag this other grid over like so. And you can see here it doesn't match up perfectly up at the top, so you can click on these grids here and readjust and basically bring that one up to the top, and want to make sure that this line is following down here like so. And so that establishes that grid. And now I have this grid, and I'm going to make it a little bit taller than the building. And this grid over here, I'm going to make that a little bit taller as well. So the basic way that this works is as you're doing cloning and copying in this tool, you can only do those clones and copies on the grids themselves. So you know, you can always shrink them up and size them up and down as the need arises. Also up here you can see you have grid size, so if you need a tighter grid you can, you know, make your grid smaller or larger, and you can see how that affects both of them. Some people prefer a tighter grid, some people, you know, prefer a wider grid. It's really personal preference. Now at this point I'm going to hit OK and get out of this command, because this command is notoriously frustrating at times, because if you're used to hitting escape to get out of a command, you may find yourself hitting escape while you're in this tool, and what ends up happening is escape, when you hit escape in this tool, it will basically get rid of your changes and bring you back into Photoshop. So let's do that, and I'll just hit escape and we'll come in and one more time and create our grids. But so when I usually first create my grids, I go up and hit OK, because it will save my grids in my Photoshop session. But if I hit escape right now like that, I've just lost everything that I've done, which can be a little bit maddening if you've already started going in there and you've created your grids and you've also started doing some cloning and things like that. So what I'm going to do is go back up here and we'll go back into Vanishing Point one more time, and you can see the grids are now gone. So let's reestablish those grids. This time I'll maybe go on the front face here and just do it the opposite way. So we'll come down, straight down like this, and we'll come down to that foundation over here like so, and that establishes that grid. Hold down the control key, drag this one over, and you can see how that perspective is a little bit off, so we'll crank that up to the top right up there and bring this one down to the bottom right there. So now we've established our two perspective grids, and if you want you can bring them up like so. There's no real need to do that at this point, but just to show you that you can. And I'll hit OK at this point, and now that is saved. Now before I go back in there again, I'm going to start doing some cloning and copying to get rid of the trees and such. What I'm going to do here is make a new layer above my background copy, because I want all my cloning edits to be non-destructive, so I want to put them on this layer here, and I'm going to just call this cloning layer. And we'll go back up here to filter and back to Vanishing Point, and you'll see that my grids are now established in there. So there's a couple of different ways to go about cloning and pasting in here, and you'll see that. And the beauty about this tool is if I want to say take this window right here for instance and clone it over here to this window and the one that's obscured in the middle and this one here, it will make each window subsequently larger. So it will make these windows in perspective. So let's first look at that so you can see how that works. So I'm going to use the zoom tool in here, and you can zoom up to this area right here for instance. And the first thing we'll do is try the stamp tool. Okay, and up at the top you have options for diameter and hardness, opacity, and healing, and we'll talk a little bit about those as we go along here. The first thing we're going to do is, just like using cloning in Photoshop, you hold down the Alt key to establish your source point. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key and put my cursor right on this point right here on the lower corner of this window. and it will establish this little green marker in here. And you can see here is my clone that I'm putting up here in the window. And you can use your right or left bracket keys to make this bigger or smaller. As you can see, I can left bracket, right bracket. I'm right now hitting my left bracket. I'm hitting my right bracket to make it bigger. So now I have a corner of this window established, and I can come over here and line it up with this window right here. And I'm going to click to establish where I'm going to start, and then I'll start painting. Okay, and you can see here it will follow the window over on the right with the green marker, and at the same time I'm kind of painting in this window here. And then we'll just kind of move right over to this next window. Okay, and you can see how that's working here, and we can come right up and just kind of paint that in as well. And notice that the window is a different size, and it's following right along with everything else. And we'll just kind of clone this one here. You can see it's not exactly in the same position, but it's close enough for what we're going to be doing with this project here. And we'll just come down. See, now I'm getting that box over here, which I don't necessarily want. I could come down here on the bottom and establish this concrete down along the bottom here and just kind of paint like so. And notice that it follows the line. Alright, I could come up top here and notice that this one here is off a little bit. So if I kind of start painting, you can see that that one is off a little bit. And the reason that this is probably happening is our perspective grid might not be exactly positioned correctly. You can see here our green line follows along the foundation, and it's over here. The other thing that we have going on is well, no, that I thought that this was bumped out, but it's not. It's actually inset. There's some columns out here on this side. But we could go in here and try to adjust our grid by, clicking on it. All right, and go in here to our grid tool. We're clicking on our grid here and establishing. Why isn't that working? There's one marker right there where I can actually increase or decrease the size. This one right here is not showing up because it's connected to this other grid. So when we first established this grid, we should have gone in there and redone it. So let's kind of zoom back out a little bit by clicking on the zoom tool and holding down the control key to zoom out a little bit. And let's see if we can't adjust this grid a little bit more. So let's see, we have that grid here, and we can't break these grids apart. Let's see. So we could delete that grid, I suppose. And if you hit the backspace key, that will actually delete both grids. So now we've lost both of our grids, and I'll have to reestablish my grid again. So, which isn't really a big deal. It's basically clicking 4 points, and we'll come down and see if we can't get a little bit more accurate by zooming up, and maybe that will help our grid situation a little bit more. So we'll zoom up to this corner here, and we'll pick this grid. And again, when you're up at the pixel level like this and it's all pixelated, it's kind of hard to actually see what's going on, but that one up there is pretty good. Let's see, we'll zoom up to that one. This one down here. Again, we'll put it down there, and we'll zoom back out. You can also use this down here to zoom up and down this 400, where it says 400%. We can go actual pixels, fit screen, so on. It might be easier than trying to zoom in and out. So we can do that sort of thing. And now we'll establish that one down here. And we'll come back, fit on view. So that looks pretty good, or as good as we're going to get it. So I can go back to create my grid again and hold down, actually we want to be on the select tool, hold down the control key again and drag this grid out. You can see how this grid now is following a little bit better than it did last time. We still might want to zoom up to these to reestablish these points. It might be a little bit off. Okay, but you know, remember the foundation that was on the other side might be lower than this one, so putting this up to this point might not really be accurate. So we want to just kind of come up. You can see there's a little bit of distortion in the building, and we can establish this like right up to there. And then we can come back down. You can see there's a little bit of a bow in the building, but that's from the camera perspective. All right. So now that we have that done, we can go back to doing what we were doing. But so if we come back up here and try to reclone this again and establish our point, I'll click right here, and we'll come over here and try to line this back up. You can see how now it's lined up a little bit better. All right, and we can go up and start painting that out. And as we come up here, you can see it's picking the bottom of those windows. We're still getting our windows moving over a little bit, so I might not want that to happen. It's going to happen, so you have to kind of figure out another method to doing this, but it's still copying or cloning in perspective. Another method that I wanted to show you instead of using cloning is actually using selecting and copying. So basically it works kind of in this way, where we can make a rectangle around what we want to replace and then get that information someplace else in the image. So for instance, I want to fix these 3 windows right here, so I'm going to make a marquee around these windows, and notice that the marquee is going at the same perspective as the rest of the grid. So up top here, what I'm going to do under move mode is I'm going to click on source, and when I bring my cursor down here, I'm going to just basically drag up and to where I want my copy to go, and you can see how I can move this into position from left to right, and you can basically see how that's copying these. Alright, so we're copying them straight down like that, and when I release, I can get out of this and I can hold down Control D to deselect, and you can see that here. Now the only problem with doing this, what we just did, is we get this hard kind of edge up here, which was established because there's a little bit of shadow underneath the eave here casting down. So most of this matches up pretty good. Some of it is in shadow. So we could fix some of that by using the clone stamp tool, or we could try to increase the feathering, which basically will try to blend this in a little bit more. We could also try the healing, which will enable this, and let's look at what healing does here for a second. So again, I'll make another rectangular marquee around this, just slightly larger than last time, and we'll turn on source again this time, and we'll bring this up and try to line it up a little bit more like so. And this time it blended that in a little bit better. So what healing does is it will analyze what's underneath and what you're copying and try to blend them together. So Control D again, and it's a little bit less than it was last time. So we can do the same thing here with the clone stamp tool, with healing being on or off. So if I say on, for instance, I can go in here And let's hold down the Alt key and source from someplace else, maybe the bottom down here. Let's make our brush a little bit smaller, so it's about like that, and we'll hold down Alt and we'll source from down here and just kind of paint across the top to try to get rid of that line, like so. And when I do and release, you can see how it heals that and blends that in a little bit better. So I can hold down Alt over here and kind of paint down this way as well to try to get rid of those lines. Now you can see I also down here this little blue band that ended up happening here. Basically got a little bit messed up. We got a little bit of a step there, and that's going to cause some issues. So again, this is the one I want to replace, so I'm going to make my rectangular marquee around this like so, and then I'm going to source up above. So I'm going to bring this up to here and try to match it in like so. See if I can't get it perfect. And Control D to deselect that, and that comes in pretty good. So basically that's what we can do. I can hold down the space bar and I can pan around, and then down here, you know, I'm going to do the same type of thing here. I could either clone these windows over, or I could try the copy using my grid here. In this case here, we have, you know, all these windows up top and these windows down bottom. So I could try, you know, doing, I don't know if this will work or not. I'll try doing all of them all at once right down to the grid. Notice that my selection stops right at the edge of the grid there, so I can do something like that. Click on source, heal is on, so we'll come over here and try to establish this, and we'll kind of move it up, and it looks probably pretty good right there. And release, and Control D to get deselect. And so over here now we have, notice that we have a column here, but we don't over here, and that is because we picked up some of that shadow. So basically we have to get rid of that. We also picked up this little box down here, which actually isn't there. So that's some cloning basically that we can do, and I can reestablish some of that cloning by clicking right here and basically cloning some of that out like that, and holding down Alt. And I might pick a pure white area from over here. I don't know if the color will match necessarily, so we'll pick right here, but we'll see what happens. I'll just kind of, that's it. I need to make my brush a little bit bigger, so let's kind of paint down like this. The blue area I'm going to have to match up again, so I'm going to reselect right here, and then I'll match it up over here. We don't want that part there. Let's see, we'll pick right in there. And each time you do this, it's going to be a little bit different, but holding down Alt and reestablishing your position, you can come in here and basically paint some of this stuff out. Let's see, we really made a mess out of that one. So if you basically mess up like I just did right there, you can hold down Control Z, and that will undo one step backwards. So Control Z, that will reestablish that. So we could zoom up over to that area. Sometimes it's better to zoom up and see if we can't get some of that out again. So we'll hold down the Alt key and source from right here, and you can see how big my brush is. I'm just on the fringe of that dark area, so I have to kind of be pretty careful about cloning down and cloning over, so you can see that. So we can pick again. Yeah, pick again. And it's not doing a very good job here, so I'm gonna fit in view. I'm going to zoom up. We fixed this upper part, okay, so I'm going to just basically clone that down below. So we'll hold down the Alt key up here. We'll establish part of that blue area right up here, like so. And then just kind of come down like this. Clone that out. Yeah, that works better. And you can see the healing basically will get rid of a lot of those marks in there that are in there. So let's zoom back out and see how we're doing. Alright. Now at this point, if you're worried about hitting escape, if you hit escape right now, we'll lose everything that we just did. So it's good to kind of periodically just say okay, and that will save your changes. And all of that stuff that we were just doing is on this cloning layer out here. That's why we established that cloning layer. So basically I can turn that cloning layer off. You can see how we're doing. Okay, so we can see basically that. And sometimes this will kind of show up some of our mistakes. Here we can see that those windows really got shifted over to the left a little bit. So we may want to reclone that area. We also got this little dark spot right there that we can work on. So we can go back into Vanishing Point one more time and establish this over here. And let's see. So this time, you know, I might want to copy these windows straight down so that they're lined back up. So that's what I'll do here. We'll go into the marquee tool one more time. Again, because we're doing this, if we copy these ones straight down, we're going to get this dark area up here again. You might want to try to clone these ones as well over here. So what I'm going to do is going to start my rectangle over here, kind of about like that, and then change to source and drag these windows over and try to line them up a little bit better this time. And to my eye, that's looking pretty good right about there. We want to line it up horizontal and vertically. So we'll release there and hit OK, and that brings us out, and that looks a little bit better this time, so you can see that. So let's now focus on the front here. We got some challenges up here on the front. We got this tree obscuring the doors, we got this sign, we got this other tree, and we got a couple awnings on here, which I'm going to actually kind of get rid of. We don't really need those for what we're doing here. So let's go back in here again and zoom up to this area here. Alright. So in this area here, again, I might want to clone this window over to here instead of copying these up. And the reason I'm doing that is if you notice the reflection in these windows is different than the reflection down here. So if you actually copy this window down, it may be pretty obvious to somebody because you can see how all these windows have the same reflection on this level and on this level. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to use the clone stamp tool again and establish this corner right here. And I'm going to come over and paint to that corner right there. So we'll just come over like that, come up and over. Just kind of paint that through like so. That looks good. We'll come up and establish that part up there. The blue looks like it's lining up pretty good, so I'm going to just continue on up through here, and if we're lucky, then this window will be pretty good and looks good. So we'll establish that. Now when I released here, notice what happens because of that healing being on. What healing does is it tries to blend what you're cloning to the original. So you can see it's trying to blend that blue in. So in this case down here, we want to fix this. So I'm going to turn healing off for a minute, and we'll reestablish this point right here, and we'll come back over and we'll just repaint it again because we don't obviously want that blue up there, so we're gonna come right over and reestablish that. We're picking up some of the old blue from the other one, so I'm gonna stop at that other window and we'll clone that other window out here in a second. So we'll kind of do that sort of thing like that. Come up here and fix that, and then I'll release, reestablish. And I usually like to pick the largest window and then go smaller. You don't have to, but I think it's a better option. It's better to make things smaller than larger as they get pixelated, so I can come up and refinish this window here. I can get rid of that vent as well if I wanted to. And then we can kind of come down like that. Alright, so now you'll notice all three of these windows have exactly the same reflection, which can be a bad thing if it's a repeating reflection. So you could go in and try to establish some cloning from another window. Like for instance, we might take the cloning from this window, and this will actually let you wrap, but it depends how good the grids are set up. So let's try it just to see what will happen if I kind of click right in this window here like so, and I come over to this window here. Notice how it lets me paint in there, but I'd have to be fairly careful about what I'm doing here. So you can see it's kind of doing something like that. So you can see it puts that in there, and that might be enough to trick somebody out with that reflection. You don't really know what's reflecting across the street, so we're not exactly sure what that's going to look like. So it could look fine like that. So what else did we need to fix? We needed to fix this little mistake up here, so we'll just kind of click on that and go up there. There we go. We'll come down over here and fix some of this on the ground level here. Kind of do that sort of thing there. Alright. Moving along, we have this tree in here to fix. So again, we may want to copy this over to this side. So we're going to try, basically what I'll do is I'll copy this whole window. We have this little tree sticking up in there, so we could try maybe doing something right around there, kind of like this, coming right down to the bottom. See if we can't get the nice straight line there. And we might want to try, I'm going to leave healing off on this one because we got this blue area that it may try to bleed in there, so I'm going to just try this first and see what happens. So we'll come over here and get this window established. Put it in right about there. That looks good. Alright. And then we can do the same thing up here with this tree. Now we have a door that we're going to have to replace down here, so that's going to be an issue as well. But I'm going to just take a couple of these panels and copy them down. So let's go in here and copy, and we'll basically establish, like we'll take some of this blue area and we'll come all the way down to about, and I'm doing that opposite. We need to come down and encompass this area first. So something like that, source, and then we can kind of bring this up and over, try to line it up. There we go, right there. And then basically down here we have this door. Let's say it okay and get out of there. So now you can see here that looks pretty decent. Let's turn that on and off. I need to zoom up to this to find out if we went too low on that door. Now the door is right about where it needs to be. Alright. So that looks good. Let's go back into Vanishing Point again. So you can see this whole process of going in and out, and by getting out of it, it saves your changes, so which is kind of nice. So let's zoom out a little bit like that. So all of these three windows here need to come over to here because I don't want the awnings. We could probably you know, have these three awnings, but we don't have awnings anywhere else. And basically what we're trying to show is different surfaces on this building. So I'm not going to worry about those awnings right now, and we're going to just basically take them out. So we can go in here and clone out some more of this tree. We have this white bar here that needs to come over as well, so let's establish that. So we're gonna come over and try to get that amount out. Alright, so we'll come and source that. We'll come over and we'll find this and line it up with the base. And now we're getting some of that gutter, which is not what we want. We kind of want this opposite. So instead of doing this, I think we're going to have to actually do some cloning instead of copying, because this really needs to be mirror imaged. But so we'll do a Control deselect on that, and Control Z, and Control Z again, and Control D. There we go. So we'll go over to this now and hold down the Alt key and pick right about here, and we'll just kind of try to establish this straight line down like so, all the way down to the bottom like that. And then I'll make my brush a little bit smaller, and we'll copy some of this beige right here, and we'll come down right through there and try to establish that down. So it may take a couple of different tries to get this one done right, but something like that. We'll kind of do that over there, and right there, and right there. Lines are what show up the most, so you want to try to establish those. And then let's do this one right in here. So we could take, let's try all of these. Let's see if we can't get all of those all at once. And we'll come over and basically get these windows, bring that foundation down, try to match it up, try to line it up like that. Now I'm trying to line up that blue banding. You can see that right there. There. Let's hit OK. It's not looking too bad. We can see some errors in there, but for the most part it's looking pretty good. And you can also use cloning within here to get rid of some of this other additional problems that we may have caused ourselves. So you can come in here and use the clone stamp tool. We'll make our brush smaller, obviously, and we'll hold down Alt right here, and we'll just come in here and just kind of brush down like that to establish that. And over here, I want a nice hard line for this white area here. So sometimes you can mask out areas, like for instance, I want this area here to be all white. So I want to come over here and pick here and come back up and over like so. And we're going to use the clone stamp tool to get some of this white over here, but I want a small brush to pick up the white coming down like that. So I'm going to hold down Alt. I'm going to pick right here on the edge, and I'm going to paint right down here on the edge, and I'm going to hold down Shift and click down here to make a nice white straight line down, and I'll reestablish again. And whoops, it's going the wrong way. I should pick down here. So we'll pick right there and paint up like that. I just have a little bit of white area in there, so I'm gonna pick right there and kind of paint that in like that. Paint right in like that. Let's take it right from the top again. I'll bring it right up there, and I'll click here, hold down Shift, and click down, and that paints that in. So what this is doing is it's actually masking out this area, so that way when I do a Control D to deselect this, we'll have a nice hard edge on there. So we just have a little bit of cleanup up there to do now, so I could come in here and just kind of paint that in like that, and that will take care of that. So now we're looking pretty good here. All we have left to do really is to establish along the ground out here, finish up this cloning in these areas out down here. So we can zoom up and pan over a little bit and just do some cloning in here, and hold down the Alt key, establish my ground right there, and just kind of paint some of this out. I want that line right there, kind of paint that out, kind of paint that out. And if it doesn't line up perfectly, it's not really a big deal on this one here, but whoops. So something like that. Take this one out. I could be doing this in the perspective tool as well, but sometimes it's just as easy to take that stuff out right here. We've got a little piece of snow there we can take out. And along here we're gonna just kind of do this sort of thing here. Okay, and we'll zoom out. So there we go. Before, after, before, after. Now we still have that little bit of a error in there, so we could try while we're right in here with the clone stamp tool, just kind of take some of that out right there, and try to take some of that out right there, and try to take some of that out. There we go. And I don't want that little sign in there either, so we'll take that out as well. Okay, so there we go. Now step 2 is a little bit more complicated, where we're going to actually put on some siding or brickwork on this. Brickwork is going to be harder because you have to line up the bricks. Siding isn't as hard, but I'm going to show you both methods here. So the first thing that we want to do is find a large field of brick. So I'm going to go into Bridge for a second here and look in here, and I happen to be on this right place where I'm gonna get my brick from. I want a lot of brick, and I want it about the right scale for putting in here. So I'm gonna try this image right here, and I'm gonna open this up, and I'm gonna show you how to take something that's in perspective and bring it out of perspective for us to actually work on. So we can do that up here underneath the crop tool. If you click and hold on the crop tool, we have the perspective crop tool. So on the perspective crop tool, what I want to do is follow the perspective of this, and you can see down bottom here we have a nice line of brick going right across the bottom like so. And I might not want to pick up this one here. I'm going to kind of go to right about there, and then I'm going to come up and you can see the perspective grid show up, and I want my grid to go along these corbels on the top here. So we're going to click right about here, and we'll come over and follow that perspective grid to about right there. So now you can see I have this nice perspective grid on here following the perspective of my wall. If you need to adjust it a little bit, you can. If you didn't get it just perfectly, you can see how it puts the angle on for you. It tells you you're at -2 degrees or whatever. So, but we want right about there. That looks good. Once I'm happy with that, I can click on this check mark up top, and there you go. This will put this right in like this for us. And the only thing I have left to do in here is now get rid of some of these windows, which is going to be easy with the clone stamp tool. But we could also use the pattern stamp tool, which we haven't looked at yet. So let's look at that. Actually, no, that's not what I want to do. I'm sorry. We want to use the patch tool, which is up here under our spot healing brush. And this works similar to like what we were doing in the perspective grid, where you actually will take an area and make an area around surrounding what you want to replace. So I'll make just kind of like a loop around this like this, and then I can basically just drag to the right and line my bricks up. So basically what I want to do is line up the bricks horizontally so we can have an established pattern here. So we can do something like that. Well, it looks good, and then I'll release, and that will take that out. So let's do that one more time. We just basically surround what we want, and then we drag where we want to source from. Okay, so let's see, we want to kind of do something like that, and Control D, so you can see it does a pretty good job. Messed up a little bit right there. You can always use your clone stamp tool to go in there and fix any little errors that you might have. So hold down the Alt key. Whoops, wrong clone stamp tool. Right here, and we'll just kind of put that in like that, fix that one. Lastly, we have this one over here, so we'll go around this one as well, and we'll kind of bring that over like so. Watching my bricks and my mortar lines, trying to establish something that looks correct. Mostly you want to keep the horizontal lined up, and then it'll try to fix the rest. So now we have a nice field of brick, and if you got up top here, we got a little bit of some errors up there as well. I'm gonna just crop out some of that stuff here, so we can go in to our crop window, and I want to take my crop. I'm going to clear that out because I don't want it cropping at an aspect ratio. I want to just easy crop here. So we're going to just kind of come down, and I'm going to crop out the top of that stuff so I don't have to fix it. And the bottom of it, we want to crop it up to the bottom as well. This just will fix it so that we don't have to do as much work. So now I have this big field of brick wall. Okay, I got some spots on here that, you know, like that's a dark spot, but that shouldn't matter. If something like that's bothering you, again, just, you know, use your clone stamp tool and establish a point, and remember to keep your horizontal lines lined up. All right. So now I want to basically put this into our clipboard so that we can use it in the perspective, and we're going to use this field of brick. So the way I'm going to do that is we're going to come up here and say select all, and then I'm going to hold down the control key and hit the C key, which will copy this into our clipboard, or we could come up here and say edit and copy. And either way you do it, we'll get it into the clipboard. So then we can come over here, and before we bring it into perspective, what I'm going to do is establish a new layer. Okay, and we're going to call this wall, we'll call it front wall bottom. All right, and I'll come in with my polygonal lasso tool, and I'm going to establish where I want the brick to go. So I'm going to basically make rectangle marquees around where I want the brick to go. So we're going to define that as an area. We're going to come in and define this is an area, and we forgot our front door, so we're going to have to come back to that. That's fine. We can fix that later. Show you how to do that as well. Whoops. Oh, we're in subtract. We want to be in add first. So Control D. Let's do that again. So we'll come in here and pick, and we'll do all these like so. And should have some music going on while I'm doing this. Make you guys bored. And we'll come over here. Finding that little edge right there is a little bit difficult, but I can see it pretty good, I think. And so something like that. And then it's best at this point to cut out the windows. We could cut these out later, because what we're going to do is establish a layer mask, and you guys know how layer masks work. We can continually work on them, but you might save yourself some time if you go ahead and subtract out these holes for the windows right now. It would just take a few minutes, so I'm going to just go around them, and we'll pause it while I'm doing it. Okay, so we have these selected now, and I'm ready to make my mask. Now I've made a few mistakes on purpose so that I can show you later that we can go in and actually fix this stuff. For instance, I didn't do my lamps up here, which is fine, and I cut this corner off right here, which is fine. So once you have this established and we're on this new layer, I'm going to just click on my mask tool, and it's going to create that mask. So basically we want to come back to the main layer, not the mask. We want to click on the layer itself, and then we can go back up here to Vanishing Point. And while in Vanishing Point, we're going to hold down the Control key and hit V to paste. So we have to do Control V, and that should paste in our big brick. And you can see our brick is huge. Okay, I'd rather have it large like this than small. So we want to, at this point, we can size this. In our buttons over here, you can see we have this button here as our transform tool. So we can actually click and drag this. Now, in order to keep the aspect ratio the same, we don't want something that looks like that. Hold down the shift key so that way you can kind of establish your brick pattern like this. And now this is going to look different once we bring it into the perspective. So I'm going to size it about like that big. And then when I click on my move tool here and bring this down, actually we'll go back in here. I'm going to click on this and bring it down in. Notice how it will change scale, and it's now on my perspective grid, so you can see how it flows to my perspective grid. And basically what I want to do is get it over there like that, and then I can hold down shift again and size it. So I want my brick pattern to be about like that big. Okay, so let's bring it down a little bit smaller like that, and then we can stretch it out to about there. Now don't get too wrapped up on the size. I mean, we could count bricks if we wanted to, and we could say, well, you know, it's 7 feet or 8 feet tall from here to here, and we know that each brick is, you know, 2 1/4 inches high or whatever, and we could count the bricks, but I'm not worried about that. Just for aesthetics reasons, we're just gonna leave that alone for right now. And I don't really care that it's up above this blue band or anything like that, or it's covering over my windows, because remember, we're using our layer mask to establish our cutouts. So when I hit OK up here, now we have our brick in here. Okay, so you can see here, there's our brick pattern. It's on this layer right here, and our mask is masking out what we want it to see. So you can see here, if we count, we have 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. It looks about right to me. I mean, you know, you want to kind of do this by eye, and you can see how that now establishes our brick pattern in here. So we can zoom up to areas that we've made mistakes on, and we can use our paintbrush tool, painting with black and white. And you may want to use a square brush. You know, you can go in there and use a round brush if you want to, but I prefer square brushes in this case here. So we could go in and start painting. I'm painting with black. Okay, so I can just kind of come down and paint that out and fix that one there. And if you make a mistake, you can hit X and you can paint that out right there. And then we can come over here to where these lamps are and try to get those painted back out. So you can see why it's a good idea to probably do this ahead of time versus now, because I'm not exactly sure where that lamp is or those lights are. I know they're up here someplace. So if we paint, I'm going to have to kind of paint that light back out. I could make a big circle kind of like that and hit X, and now paint back my brick. So I could, you know, zoom up to that obviously and try to do a better job, but you can see how I can paint around that anyway. And we can kind of just do that thing like that. So that's close enough. And then we'll do the same over here. Hit X and just kind of brush out what I want to see. Hit X again and then paint back some of our brick. So we can do that sort of thing like this. And there we go. So let's zoom back out, fit this to the screen. So now we've changed the front of this facade, and I said we were going to fix this door, so let's go ahead and fix this door. So in order to fix this door, I actually want to go out and find a real door that is going to go in its place. So we'll go into Bridge, and I'm going to go under my Stock Architecture folder and come down to Elements, These are architectural elements like windows and doors and lights and door knockers and things like that. So hopefully I have a set of doors in here, and there we go, right there. We got a nice set of commercial double doors. So we're going to open that up. All right. And again, I'll go in and you can use the perspective crop on this, because this is actually, you can see it kind of has a little bit of a bow to it. It looks like whoever took this maybe had a wide angle lens, so we can go in here and establish our perspective grid and see if we can't crop this out. I'm not going to worry about the hinges too much. They're not going to show up at this scale anyway. And we'll hit OK. So now we have our doors like this. And you know, we may want to crop this a little bit further. I'm actually going to get rid of those hinges. They're going to be more of a hindrance, I think, than a help. So we'll just get those cropped out of there, and now we have something that looks like that. So this has a reflection, and so, but let's see if it will match up and not worry about it. We could do some cleanup work right now, excuse me, to this if we wanted to. But let's just basically bring it in first and see what it's going to look like. All right, so we'll come up here to select all, and that will select it, and we'll hit edit, copy, put that into the clipboard, and we'll come back in here and we'll go back up here. We're going to go back to our cloning layer because that's where we want to put this door. So we're going to clone it in right down here, and we'll go into our vanishing point one more time. We'll zoom up to this area right here, and we'll do a Control V to paste this in. So in comes our door. It's up top someplace, so we'll do this. All right. So you can see it's much too large. We'll go in here to our transform tool and just hold down shift and scale it down a little bit like so, and then we'll bring it over like this, and you can see it will go into perspective for us. So I'm going to just establish it right about there, and then hold down my shift key and click a corner and bring it down and put it right in about right there like so. And then we can zoom up to it and tweak it a little bit more. So we'll click on that. We'll bring it up a little bit. It's going to be a black bar across the top, some black across this side here, and some blue. So we'll have a black line going down there like that. The bottom of the door probably will come right up to where the foundation is right there. And that should be good. We'll hit OK. And now we have our door in there. So it's not the right color at this point, but that's okay. What we're going to do now is do some vertical cloning. So we really don't necessarily need the perspective grid to do that. So I'm going to do the same trick, and we're going to mark off an area that needs to be blue. So we can see we still have some of that tree left right here. So I'm going to click right about here, come down to about here, come over, and then come up to about like right here and over, and that's good there. So we're going to come up to our clone stamp tool and make it a little bit smaller. Hold down the Alt key, pick right on the edge of this. I need about all this much, so right about there. So we'll just start painting down. I might have to reestablish it again. So we'll come over, paint that up like that. I'll reestablish it again, put it right up here on the edge. Come down here, put that right in there. Come over and up, painting that in. Control D to deselect, and now we have that in there. The only thing really left here is establishing down at the bottom here, getting some of this concrete across here. So again, we can clone source, from over here and basically clone out some of that grass and other stuff. We may want to use some of this concrete here and paint some of this out. So we can kind of do that sort of thing. And again, we're quite a ways away. We're zoomed up pretty close here, so we're just establishing that foundation. We don't know how the grass is going either there. There's some sort of step up. There might be a ramp there or whatever, but I'm not sure. Then we might want to darken this door up, because if you look, the trim on this is this dark black. So what we're going to do is zoom up to that door, and you can see it's pretty pixelated, so that's why I didn't worry about these things that are in the door too much. We could have put the door on its own layer, which might have been kind of nice, but we didn't. I should have probably. Up above here, I'm going to establish a new layer here, and we're going to paint with an opacity of maybe around 50%. I'm going to paint with black, and I'm just going to kind of come in here and paint over this door. And I'm going to do it kind of sloppily right here. You can see it's pretty sloppy because we're going to use a mask to fix any of this stuff. So, and at 50%, I'm kind of building it up, so I'm painting twice. Alright. Got a little bit of a dark area in there, so we could probably paint back with a little bit of white. No, I messed that all up, so we're going to do it one more time. So I'm going to just trash that layer. I don't like the way that came out, so we'll just do it one more time. Do the same thing, but just make sure that you don't release your mouse so that you don't get overlapping color like I did before. Whoops. So let's do that one more time. So we'll just kind of paint. And that's what causes that overlapping color, is when you release your mouse and you put in that second. So now I'm going to release my mouse and get some of that up there. And then when I click again, it will make everything one more shade darker. Alright. Now on this layer we can establish a mask, so I can basically cut out what I don't want to see. So we don't want the stuff on the edges here, so we'll go around the door frame itself. Actually, we want to be on plus. So this is going to be one mask. So this will be a mask. I'm going to invert it. Okay, so that will clean up that mask around there, and then we can actually go in and paint out some of that other mask stuff. So we can just kind of paint down. And again, this is so far away, it's probably not going to even matter too much, but I can paint that down. You can see how I'm screwing some of that up, but make our brush smaller again and repaint. Again, we're on our mask, so we want to just paint that out. Let's see how it's looking. We'll just zoom back because we're way up. So that doesn't look too bad from where we were looking. So now we have our doors established. So we can go ahead and put in more brick on this side. We'll do the same thing as I did before, where we'll I'll do it a little bit quicker this time, show you another method here. So we'll come up here and create another new layer, and we'll say right wall bottom, and we'll go in with our marquee tool, a polygonal marquee tool, and this time I'm going to come right straight across everything and come down here and come over like this and back up, and then subtract out our windows. This time I'm going to just make one big rectangle around all of these groupings, because I can paint in the middle. So we can kind of do this a little bit faster. As you can see. Okay. Alright, so something like that. Alright, we'll make a mask for that. We need to go back and get our brick, because it's no longer in our clipboard, because we clipped in the door. So it's still selected, so we're going to just go up here and say edit, copy, and we'll go back into here, go back, and we want to make sure that we're on this layer. Now if we try to go into perspective into our vanishing point while we're in the mask, it won't let us. So if you're on the mask and you come up here and you do filter, notice that vanishing point is grayed out. So if we have to go on the actual layer itself, and then we can come up here and hit vanishing point. And now we can go ahead and do a Control V to paste this in. And again, we're going to size it down. So hold down Shift, we're sizing it down, something like that. We're going to bring it in like that. And then we're going to hold down Shift and size it down, something like that. I'm going to bring it up so I have this middle grip here. I'm going to stretch it over like this. And now I'm going to zoom up to try to match up the bricks. This is the tricky part here. So we're going to try to match up the size of these bricks. So you can see here, I want to try to match them up as best as we can. So we'll hold down Shift. And again, this is going to take a little bit of doing, because we got to go ahead and put this in and try to match them up. So I'm looking at the bottom here, and they're matching, 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 matching. So then they start to fall away. So we're matching up to here. Then it looks like they're getting a little bit bigger. So, or actually smaller maybe. That looks pretty good there. We got them matched up pretty decent there. Alright, so we'll zoom back to fit in the view, and then I'll just drag this over to the very end. That should be good. We'll hit OK, and then we have it there. You can see here we have a line there that we have to fix, but we can go in now to our mask, and I can now paint in the middle of these, so I can make my brush just as big as that part right there. And we want to paint with white. Hold down Shift and kind of paint that in, and hold down Shift and paint that in. Make my brush a little bit smaller. Click right there, hold down Shift, paint that in. Click, hold down Shift, paint that in. Brush a little bit smaller. Click and Shift and paint. And lastly right there, shift and paint. So you can see that was pretty painless. Now, problem we have here now is, oh, we got this one here too, so we'll just kind of hold down shift and paint. And almost. And there we go. Okay, so we still got a couple little lines over there, and brick isn't lining up perfectly, but it's not too bad. You could try to move it and stretch it in here a little bit if you wanted. You can see you can still establish your stretching. That might work a little bit. If you have to do a small little tweak or something, you can do that. But this other one is probably coming from this one here, so we can go in and paint in there a little bit. Just kind of paint that out there. And we'll just kind of come down. There we go. All right. So the other thing we have going on in here is we have these columns that have come out a little bit. And so you notice that on this side here is a little bit of shadow on both of these. Plus this one here, we have this downspout that's coming down. So first thing I'm going to do is put in that downspout. So we're going to make my brush a little bit smaller and switch to black. And I'm going to click once here. I'm going to click once down here by holding shift and establish a nice straight line, because that's what that gutter does. And then I'm going to add a shadow down here for that column that sticks out. So in order to do that, we'll do the same trick we've been doing here with the polygonal lasso tool, and we'll establish a nice hard line right there, over to there, and then back up and over. So this is the area here that we want to darken. So I'm going to go back onto the actual layer here, and we're going to use the burn tool, because burn will let you burn that up a little bit. I'm going to leave it on midtones, and I'm going to change the exposure down to about 30%. And basically I'm going to click once at the top, hold down shift, and click down at the bottom, and you can see that just darkened that up a little bit. That might be enough, but I'm going to do one more time. Every time you do it, it'll get a little bit darker. I think that looks probably good there, so we'll do a Control D to deselect, and you can see what that does. That establishes that dark line and it indicates that it's something's kind of going inside there. So we'll do the same thing over here. We'll come down to there. We'll come over a little bit and then back up and back over. That establishes that, and then we'll burn that in. We'll click once, hold down shift, click again, click once, hold shift, click again, Control D to deselect. All right. So then on, you could also establish this other side of the column, which is really kind of hard to distinguish, but basically the light would create a more of a highlight on this edge right here, the leading edge, and it would probably get a little darker as it faded off. So we could try that. Again, we'll have to establish where we're going to do some painting, and we'll come up there like that. And this time, instead of burning, we're going to use the dodge tool, midtones, and I'll reduce it down to about 30% again. And this time, instead of painting the whole thing, I'm going to just kind of click on the edge about halfway and hold down shift and come down about halfway, and you can see how that creates that little bit of a highlight there. And then you could also use the burn tool on this edge over here and click once and click again down like that. So that creates a darker area to a lighter area, and if we do a Control D, you can see how that establishes that. So it kind of makes it illusion of having a column there. So we'll do the same thing over here and see if that will work over here as well. So we'll come over and up and back over. So again, dodge about half of it. All right, I didn't dodge it much, just once, and then burn about half of it down. So Control D to deselect that. Now let's zoom back so we can see if it kind of looks like the columns are going down through there. So there you go. That's the brick. The brick is probably the hardest because you have to try to line it up, and if you don't get it looking just right, it will show up pretty relatively quickly. So the other thing we might want to do is do the same thing up here with horizontal siding. So we could do that as well. I have the completed project, but it's basically doing the same thing over again. So here's the completed project that I did earlier with the vinyl siding on this time. So we can see here we have the vinyl siding, then the brick, and then we have the cloning layers. Alright, so there's what we started with, and here's what we ended with. Good luck, have fun.